It's the Alfie Brown Show. It is whatever the date is today. I believe it's a Tuesday for release on a Wednesday. The regularly scheduled programming of the Alfie Brown Show is in flux, let me tell you. Everything is changing. The lengths of the episodes are being condensed. We could say cut down, but the feedback that I've received, and I always listen to feedback. It's very important to listen to feedback. I even listen to abusive feedback. If you've got anything horrible to say to me, then please let me know, as I always respond to enemies. That would be, I respond more. No, I'm as likely to respond to you if you're an enemy. I've actually got a backlog of message requests on Instagram that I need to respond to. That sounds like a brag. It isn't. I do like to try and respond to literally everybody that messages, but I can't. I'm taking some time off Twitter because there are, or is, some bad person on Twitter who doesn't stop messaging me. But that's all fine and nothing to worry about. It's nothing that Her Majesty's police won't. No, it's not that serious. It really isn't that serious, okay? It really isn't that serious. And please, please don't be put off, okay? I always respond to enemies. So if you... anyway, the point is, the podcast is changing in terms of its format. It's going to be released in half-hour bursts, and that will allow me to focus more on episode variety in terms of theme. I want to bring back what I was doing in lockdown, which was something called sedentary comedy, which is where I tried to, I don't like the word riff and I don't like the word improvise, and it puts me in a very difficult situation when I mean either of those two things. But sadly, both of those words have been ruined for us by either improv has been ruined by zany students who think that their energetic and lively energy isn't annoying and is worth putting on display somewhere. And riffing has been ruined by self-important, jocular men who think that their bawdy and self-congratulatory love of their own voice is actually, they confuse how much they love the sound of their own voice with the actual words that they're saying being interesting. There's a big difference there, because you go, it's just me talking. And it's not like good. I just love the sound of it, which I suppose, as I'm saying it, is an accusation that could be leveled at me. I am talking. I do like the sound of my own voice. I think, and don't think me a braggart, because I have a lovely sounding voice. Okay, that's just the way that the situation is. I don't have very nice hands. Okay, and we all are at our best when we are aware of our strengths and our weaknesses. I have a nice voice. I've started a podcast. I've not tried to do any hand modeling. And I would say, on that note, I once got kicked off of a Samsung commercial because I had a nice enough sort of look going, oh, wow, this OLED screen is very good. And then when it came for a close-up of my hand looking at the phone, they thought it would be distracting for a man with such unappealing hands to be dabbing at such a gorgeous OLED screen. So my hands cut me from a Samsung commercial. I know my strengths and I know my weaknesses, okay? And I am not riffing and I am not improvising, and I am doing both of those things, but I am better than the people who use those words. And that is what I wanted to get across to you. So anyway, it was called Sedentary Comedy. It was me riffing and improvising on various themes, topics that were suggested by the general public. That's you, listener and viewer. And I would riff and I would improvise on a theme, on a topic, and often it was quite very good. I did it live, but I won't do it live this time. So I want to bring that back as one of the episodes one of the types of Alfie Brown show that you can have. Then bigger and more solidified, just sort of update podcasts on me talking about whatever it is I want to talk about, whether it be the Ashes or my relationship or memories from my childhood or me doing this with you right now. Or then we've got other ones which are me talking about one subject for an extended period of time. And that, my friends, will be absolutely brilliant for the YouTube algorithm, because what that's going to enter into people's searches when they search, what is cancel culture, or, tell us about the history of nut farming or whatever it is I'm, talking about. More likely to be cancel culture. Whenever I've ever done requests for, sorry, my hair's gone funny. Whenever I've done requests for, asked the internet what it is that they think I should talk about, I am, I'm always asked to talk about cancel culture. So that's why it's not something I would choose to talk about, but I do understand that it's something that has quite often is not linked to any meaning, or it doesn't have a definition that we've all agreed upon, and therefore its usage in, common vernacular is a confusing thing because it means different things to different people. Anyway, that wasn't what I wanted to talk about. No, I did want to talk about that. I wanted to introduce the new formatting. There's going to be more shorter podcasts. Don't know how you feel about that. Regular days, that's all up in the air. This is still a very new podcast, and there's still lots of experimenting to do, still lots of growth, and it's going to find its, it sputters, a spluttering start, and then it finds its rhythm, and it runs smoothly off into the sunset, and will become, at one point, a top 20 globally trending podcast. You mark my words, everybody. At some point, this will be a top 20 globally trending podcast. Probably not for a good few years, but it's an independent podcast in a world where big podcasts have put their nose in. All these evil old white men who work for big podcast have now, it's big media, it's big kind of big audio, big radio. Radio have now discovered nobody's listening to the radio. And we've all responded, that's because you sort of have to, you have to be there at a certain time, and none of us want to be really. We'd all prefer to choose what we want rather than have it given to us. And then radio's gone, okay, we'll do that too. Interestingly, I listened to my friend Rick Edwards on BBC Radio 5 live every morning, but not at 6 a.m. because you can go on to the BBC Sounds Dewberry and listen to it afterwards. And he has a lovely speaking voice and nice hands, and more besides as well. And you mustn't be bitter about that. You really mustn't be bitter about that. I've been thinking, I've got my recording, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. I've got my recording at the Soho Theatre of my show, Sensitive Man, an afternoon recording at 1 p.m. with the wonderful Felicity Ward, who's doing her show Bust a Nut before me. So you buy tickets, you see both of our shows, you come to one, and then you come to t'other. And it's a double bill. One at 1, the other at 6:30. And the 6:30 one is very nearly sold out. And the 1 p.m. one is less nearly totally sold out. So you can come to either one that you would like, but they're both available. Either way, I've been thinking a lot about my clothes and the way I've never been somebody who's necessarily too conscious or pragmatic or had a good sense of aesthetic self-awareness. You might be able to tell that from my hair right now, but I've never been too on top of what I'm wearing is communicating about me, which is as we lurch further and further into a Western consumerist society and all of the capitalist structures of society permeate our mind and our everyday perception of the world around us. My awareness of my own aesthetic is becoming more and more important to me. What is what I'm wearing saying about me? Now, my manager and my director both have said to me in the past, do you know those shirts you're wearing make you look like a prick? I don't think those were those words, but they said that they look a bit hipster. They looked a bit like you are a bad prick. And I went, oh no, that's the last thing I wanted to look like. So basically, this all stems from I watched the Ordinary People video. We're just ordinary people. And my biggest fear is wearing trousers like John Legend is wearing in the video for Ordinary People, because it seems to me to be such a waste of his extraordinary songwriting talent, which has never been better exemplified than in that wonderful, wonderful song. To then be wearing those trousers and you think, oh dear, what a shame that brilliant man is wearing those appalling trousers. And you can be wearing trousers that perhaps, have a timeless quality. Those had a timed quality. There was a big time limit on the quality of those trousers, and they were boot cut jeans that had been inauthentically distressed to look worn, but in two. So there was like from the bottom of the shin to the top of the thigh, there was a sort of there's a light oval, like the. Because you know that the denim gets worn around the knee, and the denim around the kneecap gets lighter, given that's where it stretches when you sit down. But on this trouser, it's been stressed to sort of look like the kind of the leg is all one enormous knee joint that the denim has had to stretch over years and years of wear. But everything that's happened. He hasn't done any walking. He's only sat in these trousers because there hasn't been any wear in the inner leg where you would imagine that there might be chafing or environmental issues. Nothing at the bottom of the trouser. It's only been in this huge oval on the front of the jean. And of course the boot cut was, I'm not really sure what was going on there. And I had boot cut jeans, you know. And I didn't care. And I don't care right now. I mean, I think my hair looks slightly like the Will Ferrell's evil character from Zoolander. You know, it's just a bit too much. But I sort of don't care. I just, nice plain thing, please. Or whatever works. Or whatever could conceal the fact that I, have a body fat percentage of 20%, which is another thing this January. I haven't had any carbohydrate, or very little to speak of, no alcohol. So my face should look svelte. Let's hope it looks svelte. Otherwise, what was the sodding point? And I do understand it's not like a purely vain thing. It's a shame. But essentially, when you're on stage, here's why it isn't totally grotesque and vain for me to be doing that. Is because if you are, if you're performing, you need to look comfortable, which means it's totally okay to be fat or thin or whatever. Like, you know, I'm not saying that it's too you can't be distracting the audience. This is why you can't go on stage with your fly undone. You can't go on stage if you have some kind of mad quirk. If a comedian has huge ears, they'll always go, I've got huge ears. I've mentioned this before, I'm pretty sure. So you can't have anything about you that is distracting for the audience and then makes the audience think they know something about you that you don't know, because that implicitly gives them power over you, which you don't want them to have, because as soon as they even just subconsciously think that they know something about you that you don't, which is why you can't be communicating anything to the audience that you don't know about yourself, which is why you have to be harsh on yourself, which is why you have to invite criticism, which is why you can't be a fucking brat who doesn't read reviews and doesn't like people saying bad things about them. Or, you know, the fucking criticism is currency, idiot. Lap it up, ask for it. It is the most useful thing in the world. And if it's wrong, then just dismiss it, but try and engage your brain and think deeply about the thing that the person has said and whether or not it's true, because there's a really good chance that the outsider's perception of what you are chimes more accurately with other outsiders' perceptions of what you are. And if you are presenting to people, then what you are is all that you are, because what you're trying to give is something to be perceived. So what people are perceiving is fucking useful, even if it ends up being wrong or small-minded or useless. You still need it, very much so, big time. And you don't want to end up like John Legend, because there would have been somebody at John Legend's music video recording for Ordinary People. Big white room. So it's a white room. It's just him and a piano in a white room, and then people arguing. I didn't say that. We're just ordinary people. But you never do it, do you? You never do it. Like, it's intercut arguments with him playing Ordinary People, isn't it? So it's like, you know, I said, no, it has to be, the nice olive oil. Because if you get the rubbish one, it doesn't taste as good. I asked for the nice one because we're going to have it raw. If we're going to cook with it, I understand, buy the low quality stuff. It's a false economy anyway, okay? You use less of the good stuff, and it's for the salad, isn't it? So we are going to be tasting it. We're not just going to cook off the flavour. Come on. We don't know which way to go. Do you know what I mean? So I've just got black trousers and a black shirt. Anyway, when you see this special, it's going to be very underwhelming for you to know that I've thought this deeply about what I'm wearing, and exercised and so much on such a strict diet for me to look as absolutely okay. But I just didn't want to look unhealthy, because when I'm drinking and eating badly, I look unhealthy and exhausted, and that can be, I think, quite distracting for an audience, or at least I find it quite distracting to watch back. So maybe I'm just doing it for my own sake. A lot of it is vanity, and vanity is one of those words that is all pejorative, but it's mixed up in things that are also like the sliding scale from vanity to self-respect, or just taking care of yourself, is there's a crossover point somewhere where one becomes the other, and it goes from being, hey, you got a great sense of style and you really look after yourself, to you very vain. So yeah, there we are. What else do I want to talk about? I wanted to talk very briefly, and I've got this idea for a bit, so I hope you'll stay with me. I feel as I get older that I'm starting to know. Well, this isn't the bit. The bit is about how when you're a kid, the dynamic of your relationship to your parent. And I'm thinking a lot about this with my dynamic to my relationship with my kids and the way in which it changes over time, because I've just entered a new phase of my relationship with my 7-year-old son, and we're going to move in together. With my son, whereby he is more, I can tell that he has more of a sense of awareness with regard to the fact that he looks at me and goes, oh, I'm going to grow up into one of them, or, a more refined and better. But I mean, obviously I'm his dad, so I'm a pretty good level human. I mean, in his eyes, he's biased towards the fact that I'm pretty good at what I do, comedy and parenting, rightly or wrongly. And therefore, in his eyes, I represent, not as good as it gets, but somewhere near. I'm a good representation of man. And he was understood that he is going to grow up into a man. And now his affection towards me and interest in doing things that I like doing is starting to grow. And his wanting to just do things with me generally, it's kicking on a little bit, which is absolutely fantastic for me as somebody who craves love. And I adore him, as I do all three of them in exceptionally different ways. So the dynamic of my relationship with him is child adult. And what I want to think about is now I am thinking more and more about my childhood relationship with my parents in the context of my relationship with them now. And it's almost like when you become an adult, you have to sort of throw away or ignore, or at least I do as the child of my parents. I no longer think about my childhood when I'm with them. And I don't think about my present relationship with them in the context of the childhood that I had with them. Because to think about yourself in as a child, knowing who they were and what they thought of you and what they were to you and how close you were, like how much you needed them, how much you relied upon them, and how deeply affectionate you were, and how, like, this is a bit kind of deep, but or like not funny for a podcast that is in the comedy section. But my worst nightmare when I was a child was always one of them dying. I would shudder, and that, to use the Philip Larkin line, fear would every now and again flash afresh to hold and horrify. And there were kids at school who had lost parents, and I just didn't know. I didn't know how they were even at school. I didn't know what they were doing there or how they were functioning. And I was obsessed by it. And my children are now, oh, well, you can't, mummy, you can't go here. Otherwise, there might be what if there's a volcano there, or what if there's such and such a thing. And now, as I'm older, I mean, I'm sorry if either of my parents are listening to this, but it's no longer my greatest fear. My greatest fear is one of my own children going. And that brings me the same sort of fear and revulsion that thinking about my parents going did when I was a child. Anyway, what was the thing? It was a fucking idea for a comedy routine. I'm just allowing you, listener or viewer, the deeper context of how I came to think about this. And it's meandering slightly, but there are no bad ideas in brainstorming. and the intrigue and the depth of the idea, I think it's a big one, is always the foundation for the funniest stuff. So sort of almost for me, it's being an adult, having a relationship with my parents that functions in this day and age, in this time, in this now, me as a 34-year-old man and them as people in their 60s. And having to almost ignore how emotionally exposing my relationship with them as a child was, having to go back on, not go back on it, but what have I written down here? I feel as I get older, I start to know my parents less well. Everything we are to each other now is a betrayal of what we were. Again, what we're doing there is, in comedy, you take an extreme point of view as a foundation for the jokes to arise. So again, if you're in the audience, you might hear the words and think, oh no, he means that directly and literally, but I don't. The words are a delivery system for an idea that hasn't been expressed yet. Okay? I think I'm going to get that fucking tattooed on my forehead, just so audiences stop going, you said those words, you mean that thought. I don't mean what I just said. There is, you use exaggerated forms of ideas to express the crevices in the consensus of everyday life, don't you? I entered into my relationship with them as a child. That was the relationship as I understood it, and I'm not sure how it's been allowed to change. I can't have a friendly relationship with these people. They know too much. Maybe that's the key. It's like seeing an old friend who knew you when you were younger. Haha, yes, well, no, that's not really who I am anymore. Yeah? And then, there's probably a way to elucidate that feeling or make that expression of anxiety more bold when you see somebody from your past. And you don't only, when you see somebody who you went to university with, I never went to university, but you might have done, or you see somebody for an old job or whatever, and they know the things about you that you've spent the last 10 years trying to erase. They know you more well than you presently, or the you that they know is the one that you've tried to flush down the toilet, that you've tried to extinguish. And now this embarrassing kind of corpse of a decade's previous ill behavior starts to wave around in front of you, and you've got to remember all your old expressions, or the way that you used to dress, or in my personal, the kind of lank to one side parting that I had that I would straighten because I wanted to look like Leonardo DiCaprio from Romeo plus Juliet, and I would wear sort of a pink loafers and like purple and grey pinstripe baggy suit trousers, and then very tight shirts, and I had like hugely irritating catchphrases that I would bellow at my friends and then force them to respond. And all of these things that I don't want people to know, apart from if I'm trying to express a point. When you see that person from your past, they begin to kind of, the friend carries all of these things and shows them to you with their mere presence, like kind of scarecrows on their shoulder. And whilst you might be pleased to see them, when you're seeing them, you're also seeing the version of yourself that you were when you knew them, that you longed to have left behind. And that is what I'm trying to equate to seeing your parents nowadays. The child version of you almost has to break up with them. That's another kind of like joke thing that I'm going to try and expand upon. The idea that you as a child, you have to break up the small child parent relationship is one that you have to end. Maybe that's what the teenage years are. You're breaking up with them as a child. Yeah, that's good. And through a succession of, messy and emotional fights, you you agree this isn't working anymore. You can't be my child anymore. Let's just be adults. Okay, we'll just be adults. But then you're seeing that ex. And I suppose actually the previous thing, it might be not a friend from the past, but an ex, if we're going to make this the metaphor that we build through the whole bit. And then there's this bit. So then I'm going to try and equate like a stock version of a conversation that you might have with a parent, not necessarily my parents, but anybody might have with any parent, and the awkward conversations that you might have with an ex you haven't seen for a long time. So there's that sort of head back energy and side of the face, everything in your body language, raised eyebrows, just trying to protect yourself, and nodding and not wanting to be too forthright because, of course, you're holding back your awareness of a time together, if it was a couple, spent fucking and fighting and full of pet names and love and laughter, and a brief period where perhaps you knew each other better than anybody else on the planet really knew you, and you felt truly exposed and comfortable in your exposure because somebody truly knew who you were, and you were loved, for exactly the thing that you couldn't help but present, because you were with that person who you loved and who loved you for so many hours that you couldn't possibly conceal who you truly were to them. So they now know who you are, and you're stuck with that. But they love you for it. So you found somebody. And all of the screaming, the fighting, the shitting, the pissing myself, the being fussy about food, the not doing homework, the anxiety caused to my parents by me through my lack of work at school, because them knowing what I didn't know at the time was they weren't annoyed that I wasn't doing my homework. They were annoyed that I was going to be a drag and a jobless fool as an adult, and that I was going to have a bad adult life because of decisions I didn't even know I was making as a child. And the anxiety of seeing your child destroy themselves and not give themselves the best opportunity to be the best functioning adult they could be. This is what my parents thought was happening. Put the fear of shit up them. But they loved me. And it was because, and there was nothing that I could hide from them, till I got from an age where I did start hiding things. And then we started getting in fights. And I didn't want to be their child anymore. I wanted to know them as an adult. So thank you for letting me talk about that. You had no choice, but I did. I talked about that. And that is 33 minutes of podcast. So with regards to the new, shorter podcast format, that is what I'm going to end on. More podcasts, shorter podcasts, more podcasts. Okay? Please, for Christ, message me. And I always respond to my enemies. Okay? I always respond to my enemies. So, yeah, I hope you've had a really good week. I hope you continue to have a really good week. I hope it all goes well. Come to see me at a tour show. Come and say hello afterwards. And thank you so much for listening. You have a great time, okay? Farewell. Bye-bye.